Hello, this lesson is going to be on number operations. It's going to be lesson 1A, add and subtract positive and negative numbers. Basically, the rules of adding positive and negative numbers is if the signs are the same, you add the numbers. If the signs are different, then you subtract and you use the sign of the biggest digit. Okay, let me clarify something. A positive number and a negative number. This here is a negative number. Okay, this is the sign of the number, which is negative, and this is the digit 1. Together, the sign and the digit makes the number -1. This over here is -5. The sign is negative, the digit is 5. This right here is +3. The sign is positive, the number is 3. I'm sorry, the digit is 3. Here we have number 2. Number 2 has a sign of positive. You cannot see the positive sign because usually if the number starts an expression like this, you don't need to put the sign. Okay, so if a number does not have a sign, the sign is positive. You cannot see it, but it's there. Okay, alright, so we talked about digit and the sign and the digit of a number. Okay, and basically what this is saying is if the signs are the same, you add. If the signs are different, you subtract. So when I look at this problem here, I have -1 minus 5. The signs are the same, so according to the rule, I'm going to add. 1 plus 5 is 6. And I'm going to use the sign of the biggest digit. If you notice, the biggest digit here is 5. So what is the sign of 5? Negative. So that means my answer will be -6. Okay, so the signs are the same. I add, get 6, and I use the sign of the biggest digit, which is negative. Okay, over here, if you remember, if a number does not have a sign, the sign is positive, so this is +2, +3. Signs are the same, so that means you're going to add. It will be +5, and you're going to use the sign of the biggest digit. The biggest digit here is 3, so the answer will be +5. Notice that I do not put the sign of +5 because if a number is positive and is it by itself or is at the beginning of expression like the number 2 over here, you don't have to write the sign. But if there's something in front of the number, you definitely have to write the sign. So please remember, if the number is by itself or is at the beginning of the expression, you do not have to write the positive sign. Now, negative signs, you always have to write them. Okay? So let's continue the problem. Letter C. If the signs are the same, you add. So 11 plus 7 would be 18. And you're going to use the sign of the biggest. Well, the biggest digit here would be 11. So the sign of the answer is -18. Alright. Whoops. Let me turn this off. There we go. Okay, next problem. Signs are different. So that means I'm going to subtract. So 14 take away 10 is 4. And the sign of the biggest is positive. So my answer is +4. Alright, let's go on to the next problem. Okay, next problem is -10 plus 8. Signs are different. So you're going to subtract, get a 2. And the sign of the biggest is negative, so the answer is -2. Next problem. Remember, if a number does not have a sign, the sign of the number is positive. So I have +11 minus 24. Signs are different, so you subtract. 24 take away 11 is 13, and is in negative because 24 is the biggest digit. Alright, now let's suppose I have 11 hats minus 8 hats. Well, signs are different, so you subtract. 11 minus 8 is 3 hats. Okay, now compare that with, let's say instead of hats I use the letter X. Okay, suppose I have 15x minus 8x. Signs are different, so that means I'm going to subtract. 15 minus 8 is 7. So I have 7x. Just imagine hats. 15 hats minus 8 hats means I have 7 hats. But instead of using hats, I'm going to use the letter X. Okay, letter X is called a variable. Okay, so anytime you see a letter, just remember that's called a variable. Okay, all right. The next problem is 7y minus 11y. The signs are different because 7 is positive, 11 is negative. Signs are different. You're supposed to subtract, so you're going to get 4. Now, what is the sign of the answer? Well, it would be the sign of the biggest. The biggest is 11, so the sign would be negative 4y. Okay? All right. Very good. Let's continue to the next problem. All right, we have letter J. Now, if you notice, now instead of having 3 numbers, we have instead of having 2 numbers, now we have 3 numbers. So basically what I recommend you do is do 2 at a time. You know, a lot of times students make mistakes because they try to do everything in their head at once. It's very hard to keep track of the signs if you do that. So do 2 problems at a time. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on -3, -5. Signs are the same, so you're going to add, going to be 8, and it'll be the sign of the biggest, so in this case would be -8. Now that you did that, let's bring down this -10. Okay, now we focus again into these 2 numbers. Okay, -8, -10, signs are the same, so you're going to add, so it would be 18, and it would be the sign of the biggest, which would be -18. Okay, very good. Let's continue on to the next problem, letter K. Okay, please remember this is a video, and you can stop and rewind the video to if you don't understand something. Okay, but I'm going to continue moving on. But if you have any time you need to stop to look it over, you can always stop the video and restart whenever you feel is best. Okay, all right. So the next problem is -7x minus 11x minus 34. Again, do 2 at a time. Okay, so -7x minus 11x, you would add, so it would be 18, and you use the sign of the biggest, which would be negative, because 11 is bigger than 7. Then you bring down the next term. Okay, and by the way, we call these terms. Okay, here there are numbers, but here, because they have a variable, we're going to call them terms. This is 1 term, 2 terms, 3 terms. So what I did is I combined, you know, I added and subtracted the first 2 depending on the signs. So I combined these 2 into 1, and I brought down the next term, and now I'm going to look at these 2 terms. They both have negative signs, so the signs are the same, and you're going to add 18 plus 34 will be 52, and it will be the sign of the biggest, which will be -52x. Okay, very good. So we're learning a lot of new definitions, okay, or vocabulary. First of all, the letter X means variable. I mean, it doesn't have to be letter X, it could be letter Y. So these would be variables, and you have numbers with variables. When you add and subtract, we call like combining like terms. Okay, the reason why we call combine like terms because they all have the same letter, so that means I can combine them because they are like. For example, it's like I have 11 hats and 8 hats, so that means I can combine it. It would be different if I had, for example, 11 hats minus 8 shirts. I could not subtract that because they're not the same items. Okay, and we're going to see more of that later on these problems. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to go back up to this handout, and I'm going to look at example letter K. We have 12b minus 15b. Okay, because the signs are different, remember 12 is positive and 15 is negative, you're going to subtract. So this would be -3b because 15 is the biggest digit. Okay, once you did that, you're going to bring down the next term, which is 4b. Okay, now that I have these 2 numbers, or these 2 terms, signs are the same, so you're going to add, it would be 7b, and it would be the sign of the biggest, which would be -7b, sorry. Alright, so if you feel like you're getting the hang of it, what you can do is stop the video and try some problems before continuing. Okay, so So for example here, letter L, let's do one more, okay? Because this one's a little bit different, because now instead of having 3 terms or 3 numbers, we have 4. Again, the idea is keep it simple, do 2 at a time, okay? So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the first 2, and then I'm going to do the last 2. Okay, so first 2 signs are the same. I add, so it'd be 15, and it'd be the sign of the biggest, which is negative. So negative 15. The next one is signs are different, so you're going to subtract. So 27 take away 11 would be 16, and it would be negative because 27 is the biggest. And now, since the signs are the same, you're going to combine them, or you're going to add them. So this would be 31, and it would be the sign of the biggest, which is negative 31. Okay? Alright, very good. Let's go on to the next problem, which is letter M. Let me move this circles here, so we have a little bit more clear. Okay, and let me bring it down to letter M now. Okay, here we go. Letter M. If you like to stop the video and give it a try, that's fine, or you can just watch the video and then try the assignment which goes along with this lesson. Okay, it's up to you what you want to do. Okay, alright, this lesson we have 4 terms, and what we're going to do, we're going to combine the first 2 and the last 2. Okay, when we combine the first 2, the signs are different, so you subtract. 12 minus 9 is 3, and the sign would be negative because 12 is the biggest digit. The next one is negative 5, negative 7. Signs are the same, so you're going to add, so it will be 12, and it will be negative because 7 is the biggest. Now that I have these 2 terms, I'm going to combine them. It's going to be signs are the same, so you're going to add would be negative 15 because 12 is the biggest. Okay. Alright, then we'll go on to this next example. Okay, on this next example, okay, and let me bring it up. There's something different. If you notice that before, all the terms were the same. They all have x's. What happens here is they're not all the same. So what I do is I underline the like terms. Like 15x is like 8x because they both have x's. So that means I can combine them. So negative 15 minus 8, signs are the same, so I would add. So that would be 23. And it would be the sign of the biggest, which would be negative. So negative 23x. So I'm done with the x's. Now with another type of underline, I underline the other like term, which is y. There's 7y and negative 12y. Signs are different, so you're going to subtract, and it would be 5y, and the sign would be negative because 12 is bigger than 7, so this would be negative 5y. Okay, and the number 3, there's no number that doesn't have a letter. The only thing that doesn't have a letter is number 3, so it's the only term like that. So that means all I have to do is bring it down. So I'm left with this, and if you can notice, none of them have like terms, so that means that's all I can do. Alright, and that's why in this problems, if we go up here, you notice it says evaluate. Okay, when we're doing this, this is also called simplifying, because in reality we cannot evaluate this, so this would be simplifying or combining like terms. Okay, so basically when you get an answer like this, negative 13, negative 2, you're evaluating, you're getting an actual answer. When you simplify, or when you're combining like terms, that's called simplifying. Okay, and we're going to talk more about that later, but basically remember, if you get a whole number as an answer, just like a plain number, that's evaluating. And if you're combining like terms, like you're simplifying the expression. Okay, you're making this expression that has 4 terms into one that has only 1. Okay, here I have 5 terms and I reduce it, where I simplified into 3 terms. Okay, alright, let's continuing on. Here's the last example, letter O. Letter O have many terms, as you can see. So first thing I did is underline the like terms. 2a is like 11a. Signs are different, so that means I'm going to subtract. And I get negative 9a because 11 is bigger than 2. The next one is letter B. I have 3b minus b minus 2b. One thing that you need to remember is if a letter does not have a number in front of it, you can always put a 1 there. So basically this is a 1b. You just have to imagine that the 1 is right there, okay? In a situation like this, you can either like jot it down on the side of the paper to do your calculations, or you can try to remember in your head. I would recommend writing on the side, but in this case I'm just going to work through the process. Okay, 3b minus 1b would be positive 2b. Positive 2b minus 2b would be 0. So this would be 0b. And the next one would be the numbers without letters, or remember the letters we call variables, so the numbers without variables. So we have negative 5 plus 3. Negative 5 plus 3, signs are different, so you're going to subtract. Negative 5 plus 3 is negative 2. Alright, if you notice right there, can you combine any terms? No. Also, 0b. What is 0 times anything? 0 times anything is 0. So do I have to write the 0b? No, I do not. So basically, I can bring down the 9a. I can just erase the 0b, and I bring down the negative 2. So that means I have negative 9a minus 2. Okay? Alright, this concludes the lesson 1a on adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. This is a very important rule that you need to remember. If the signs are the same, you add the numbers. If the signs are different, you subtract. And you're going to always use the sign of the biggest digit. Okay? Alright? So please remember that this is a number, negative 15. This is another number, negative 16. The sign is negative, the digit is 15. The sign is negative, the digit is 16. So when I say the biggest digit, I'm looking at 16. 16 is the biggest digit, and the sign of it is negative. So when I look at this problem, signs are the same. I add, and I get 31, and I use the sign of the biggest digit, which in this case is negative 16. Alright? This concludes the lesson. Thank you very much for your time, and have a great day.